The Great White Horseman. Hey, I've been trying to see if there was any known ghost or cryptid that matches an experience I had about 10 years ago. I tried searching from time to time, but I never thought to ask. If anyone knows anything about this, let me know. The following is not a work of fiction, and I'm genuinely reaching out to see if there's any sort of known phenomenon or similar experience out there. This took place in Fresno, California, coming up pretty frequently now, at a place formerly known as Sequoia Ridge Apartments. At the time, I was a security guard for the apartment complex. I remember that it was winter, and it was an extremely foggy night. You could only really see about 20 feet in any direction. It was around 2 or 3 in the morning when I heard a very distinctive clip-clop of a horse walking on the sidewalk. I was immediately dumbfounded, as this apartment complex is nowhere near any rural part of the city where stables might be. In fact, it was more close to the industrial part of town than anything else. Of course, my first thought was that it could be a police horse, but those are usually only used for high foot traffic events such as street festivals. I remember hearing that the clip-clopping seemed like it was coming from quite a ways off. I walked around near the perimeter of the fence, searching the public sidewalk for a solid 2 minutes before I saw him emerge through the fog. He rode past me along the public sidewalk. He was so close that if I had reached through the fence, I might have been able to touch his horse. The horse was pure white and had no saddle. The rider was a man. He was dressed like a stereotypical character from an 1800s romance movie. He had white gloves on, a red jacket with conductor tails, white riding pants, and boots. The notable part, though, was his face was completely featureless, like a mannequin. He never looked at me or acknowledged my existence, like he didn't even know I was there. When I encountered him, I was on the street corner, and he rounded that corner. But there was a kind of fence divider at that corner, so I had to run around the building to try and catch up to him at the other side. When I got there, he was gone, and I listened for the horse clip-clopping sound, but even that had gone. I saw a few spooky things working security overnight over the years, but nothing was ever like that. It was so close and vivid. I personally just always called him the Great White Horseman, and I'm really curious to see if anyone else has heard of anything like this. When I first read this story, my initial instinct was that this very well could have been a man in costume looking to spook or stir up some intrigue in Fresno. Even the lack of the features on the face could be achieved with some sort of mask, but then the fact that the storyteller immediately left to follow the horseman, only to see that he and the sound of the horse had completely disappeared, just baffles any rational explanation. Could it be that at some time in the past, that was a real scene in your town? As in, could this be a psychic imprint? Just a memory on loop? I'm not very well versed in Fresno history, even though I grew up there, but it seems like what are apartments now likely would have been a very rural area from 1860 to 1950. It was largely established as a farming community early on. I'm not entirely sure, but someone as well dressed as that would probably be out of place amongst farm workers, unless this was a memory of something special like a wedding day. I saw a strange little thing in my dorm. This happened 2 to 3 years ago while I was in my father's village, a place where he was born. I'm Spanish, sorry if there's any spelling or grammar mistakes. So, every year we go to his village and spend a part of the summer there. It's located in one of Spain's rural countrysides, and it's quite a small village. We stayed in one of my father's friends' houses. It's a flat with 2 other apartments above it, so we had a garage at the bottom floor. The other 2 apartments were completely empty, no people in them at the time. I slept in a room with 2 beds, a closet, a side table with a lamp, and, normal things a dorm has. It was summer, so I think I remember leaving the window open that night, but not completely, only a small part. The blinds covered most of the window anyway, so no person or thing could have entered. I went to sleep around 12. At one part of the night, I don't know what time because I didn't have a clock on my nightstand, I woke up and saw a silhouette of a creature in the dark at the foot of my bed. It had the exact same silhouette as those little dwarves with red hats and white beards people put out at their gardens. It was the same thing, but bigger. It stood there for a couple of seconds, then jumped from my bed and slithered underneath. My mind wasn't processing any of this, so after it jumped under my bed, I just sat there, still. After maybe 5 seconds, my mind went, well, I must be dreaming. I laid on my bed and fell asleep right after my head touched the pillow. The next morning, I immediately remembered all of this, and of course I was terrified to pull my feet out of my bed and onto the floor. Eventually, I did, nothing happened, and I went to the kitchen and told my mom about it. She told me I must have been dreaming, and didn't believe me, obviously. The next days, I was a bit scared of sleeping in that same room, and I checked under my bed every night before I went to sleep. Nothing strange happened in those following nights. I don't think it was a nightmare, it just felt too real. A quick update though. I've done some research over my village's folklore, and I've found a lot of gnome stories, amongst other creatures, in places really close to my village. I'm a bit weirded out now. Rural Spanish folklore is incredible. Turns out the local people call these little friars, because they're often seen wearing robes as those of a friar. The closest place to my village has a gnome they call Pomporia. That fits my description of the creature that I saw. Now, it's hard to say what happened in this case because of how the storyteller acted. Basically, because they were in and out of sleep a lot, there's a good chance that they were still in a dreamlike state, and because they didn't investigate further, who's to say that they even woke up at all? This whole thing could have just been a false awakening. That's not to downplay anything that they experienced, it's just definitely a possibility. The specific history of the little creature sightings in the area do seem to back up the claims here, though, so I'll let you be the judge. A couple of details are interesting to me. The hat, and that you immediately went back to sleep. I've seen fairies with the pointed hats, but smaller, like 4 inches tall. And with the falling asleep part, we had a problem with extraterrestrials that would visit our house. That's one hell of a problem. One thing that nobody reports is something we call sedation. At a certain point, we feel like we were drugged with something to make us fall asleep. Our 3 dogs would immediately fall asleep too. But if we could push through it, we'd be wide awake again in 10 minutes. Just thinking that your fairy creature might have had the same sedation ability. Because, yeah, how can we possibly go to sleep after experiencing something so unusual and or scary? Man, I've never been able to explain how I could have been able to go back to sleep after that. I've had one thought that it could be sleep paralysis because when I was a kid I used to experience seeing or imagining one silhouette in my room, and I couldn't scream even though I wanted to. Yeah, I've had sleep paralysis too, but this stuff is definitely different. I'm guessing that you're a bit more open or psychic than a lot of people, or at least more attentive, and that you tend to see and experience weird stuff occasionally. It also turns into the situation where they realize that you notice them, so word gets out and you get more visitations. Most of these things don't happen to me now that I've grown up, but when I was a kid I used to have plenty of nightmares, really fucking weird dreams, and these strange sightings. It might be interesting to ask around that area and ask the other people that have lived in or near that apartment beyond just your mom. You might turn up some other witnesses. Every place and culture has its little people. They go by different names and have different cultures, just like people. In Britain, there are fairies, gnomes, pixies, and so on, elves in Scandinavia, duende in Spanish-speaking places, jinn in the Arab world, and so on. Often they're associated with particular local places, or at times with people, as in certain family lines. They can vary in size and shape, from the tiny winged ones up to the size of ordinary people and larger. I've told my friends, and they've been to their own villages too, but haven't seen anything like it. I'll ask my dad, since he's lived there his whole life, and I'll also ask some locals. I'm from South Texas, near the Mexican border, and we call them duendes. I saw a gnome when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I wasn't sleeping or even groggy. It was bright enough that the sun was making rays come through the window, and I just happened to look at a ray of sunlight come into the room, and in that moment I saw a little gnome sliding down the ray of light like it was a slide, and it hit the ground. Once he got off the sun slide, he booked it, ran so fast with his little arms swaying back and forth like he was in a hurry. His hat was white, and I don't remember the color of his pants, but they were a darker color. I just remember it being so small and fast. My mom would always say, "Oh, you want to stay out all night like the duendes." She never told me why she would say this, but I wonder if she knew something about little people's stories. I was told that my grandfather would see little people every so often. I was told that when he was a kid, him and his brother had to cross a river, and his brother crossed and of course was wet. My grandfather was dry. When my mom asked how this was possible that he didn't get wet, he said little people carried him across so he wouldn't get wet. Strange indeed. I'll share my somewhat unrelated story of a cryptid. I saw the same creature twice, both in the daytime. Both times it was approximately 100 yards away. I first saw it when we got lost in the swamp in Mississippi running trails with my army buds. We ended up following train tracks to get back eventually, and the other time was in the middle of nowhere when I was doing pipeline survey work down in Texas. Anyway, whatever I saw was the size of a large German shepherd. It appeared very dark or black with a large bushy tail. Here's the weird part, and what made it stand out so much. It moved exactly like a weasel. You know that slinky type of gait? Anyway, that's the only weird thing I ever saw out there, and I could never find any answer to what it was. I'm glad I'm not alone. I was camping in Ojai about 20 years ago. It was the early morning, and I heard rustling outside the tent. I thought I was sneaky and tried to unzip the opening to my tent so fast and jump out and see what it was. Unfortunately, I only unzipped the inner flap and not the exterior mesh one. When trying to leap out, I got stuck on the mesh, but as my face mashed up against it, I got a glimpse of what I could only describe as what people say gnomes are. It had the little hat and everything. It stood up, picked up my dog's water bowl, and ran off with it. A few seconds later, when I was able to actually get the tent door open, I jumped out and took a better look, but it was gone. I wasn't in thick brush. There were plenty of trees and some sparse shrubbery, but nothing could have disappeared the way it did. Another thing is my dogs absolutely love chasing birds, rabbits, squirrels, raccoons, and any sort of creature. But they didn't even bark or whimper or get out. They just looked at me like, "Where is that water bowl?" Well, never thought I'd get to share this. We didn't evacuate for Hurricane Andrew. Our house was destroyed. We lived in a trailer on our property while our home was being rebuilt. My dad was an asshole and a cheapskate. He wouldn't let us use the toilet or the shower in the trailer, so he could eventually sell it for a higher cost. The house's master bath still had working plumbing. The toilet could flush and we could take a shower, albeit ice cold since there was no electricity. There was a door to the outside of the master bath, so we would prop that open for light while we showered. We lived on an acre in Redlands, Homestead, Florida, off a gravel road. It was pretty isolated. I was 8 years old at the time, and it was early evening. I remember it was still light outside, but approaching sunset. I was in the shower behind the opaque plastic curtain that you can't see too well through, and the door to the outside was propped open. So I was busy in the shower and happened to face the curtain because either I heard something or just happened to turn around. Through the curtain, I saw the shadow of a small figure, maybe a foot tall. I just remember it was smaller than me. It chuckled, and I screamed my fucking head off. Then it ran out. My mother was either outside or heard me from inside the trailer and came up a split second later. I don't remember what I told her, but I was inconsolable. My dad showed up shortly after while I was finishing my shower. I could hear my mother whispering to my dad, "Richard, she saw something. She's not lying." I've never told this story to anyone, but I know for a goddamn fact that it was something gnome or leprechaun-like. When I was 15, my best friend and I were 3 feet away from one. It was night, and we rounded a tree with a flashlight, and he was staring at us. We made eye contact, and he just turned and ran away laughing. I'll never forget it. His laugh was just like the Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz, but I didn't get the impression that he was evil in any way. He just ran one way, and we ran the other. I saw one in the Mexican state of Guerrero in 1995. My grandfather and I went out to cut wood up in the hills. He left me to take care of the horses while he cut the wood. I was just looking around, and for a second or two I saw a kid, or what looked to be a kid, behind a tree. I told my grandpa, and he nervously said not to look that way, and started smoking a cigarette. The horses and the one donkey we had started to act restless. All the way home, he smoked the cigarettes, and he asked me to ride with him on the same horse. I've never believed in anything paranormal, even till now, but I know what I saw, and it wasn't a kid. I've lived in the country backed up to a river my whole life. I grew up swinging from trees and swimming in the river. My family is a family of farmers, so we didn't have the money others had. Our entertainment was outside in the wild. I myself, in all 42 years, have never seen a little creature. My grandmother would tell stories, but I always wrote them off. Well, my daughter came in one afternoon from playing in the creek behind our house. She starts off about seeing a little man gathering water from the creek. She said that she had watched him for a long time. She even drew a picture for me. I seriously thought she was full of smoke until I read this thread. Every time she goes to the creek, she tells me to respect the place and keep it clean. She goes down and takes treats to whatever it is down there. The thought also crossed my mind just now that my grandmother has been dead for 30 years. I have no idea where she got the idea from. Either kids are wildly imaginative, or we are all tuned to things at a young age, and we slowly teach ourselves to ignore it. I don't even know how to say this, but I think I saw a gnome in the national forest yesterday. I will be the first to admit that I thought that these types of cryptids were a joke and not real, and I've never been able to take them seriously. I'm an outdoorsman, and I have been for 35 years. I grew up in the woods. I memorized trees for mushroom hunting. I know every bush, berry grove, log, you name it. So I'm on a forest road, and I'm on hour 9 of not a soul in sight. I gather some mushrooms and look up the road and see a rock has fallen from the loose, steep side of the mountain. It's landed in the middle of the road. I make a mental note that I have to move it and not to drive over it, so I gather my mushrooms and get back to the car. I look up and see what appears to be a 2 or 2.5 foot tall little brown thing walking from the side of the road over to the rock. My first logical thought is that it's a squirrel, but I see that it's walking on 2 legs and appears to be wearing brown clothing or fur clothes, and it's shaped like a human but very tiny. It's not scurrying either, it's ambling on 2 legs like a human would. Just casually walking like it's some normal, regular-ass thing, like monotonous work tasks that it has to do for a living. I don't believe my eyes. It has to be something else. I get back in the car and head up the road and see that the rock has been pushed back to the side of the road from whence it came. It had fallen off the hill, rolled to my left, then was sitting back on the other side of the road to the right, and there are drag marks like someone slid it back. I look, I smell, sense, listen, and nothing. I don't know where gnomes live, but this old, particularly logged section where I was looked pretty perfect for a clan of these things. Lots of places to hide, secluded, near water, plenty of routes of escape, and it would be easy to dig a little hole into the mountain and be fortified against invaders. The side road was flooded and appears to do so regularly, so these guys even have their own moat. It was a long drive back up the mountain, then down the mountain the other way, but nevertheless I can't pick this apart into anything else but being a tiny little forest man. I'm 1,000% positive with what I saw. It was near a military special interest zone, allegedly blocked off due to some native butterflies, but I'm starting to wonder if this research area is really about butterflies at all. They send you to prison and ban you from the parks and give you a $5,000 fine if you take a single berry from inside that boundary. I lived in Central America for a few years, and they had similar stories of small people-like creatures that live in the woods. Do you recall its facial features? It was far enough that I couldn't see his cute little face, but I could make out long white hair with a little silver left in it that went down to his butt, and then a curly, semi-manicured gray beard that went down in similar length to his hair. He was wearing a hat that looked like the ones that you wear in Canada or in the Midwest, the kind with ear flaps, but this had a short brim that was up like a ball cap and only went out about as far as his face. We call those hats Stormies in Michigan. The company that designed it is Stormy Cromer. Stormy Nomer. This was Dante Calvino. Let me know what you thought of the format for these stories, or if you have one of your own to tell. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more mystery every week.